Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? Grab your coffee, maybe a snack, and let's get into it, okay? So, what we're going to be talking about today is the food waste of the pandemic. And this is really quite alarming, if you ask me, okay? In Wisconsin, in Ohio, farmers are actually dumping thousands of gallons of fresh milk into lagoons and manure pits. And this has been happening since like 2020, okay? And an Idaho farmer has dug huge ditches to bury 1 million pounds of onions. Why? That's my question, And in South Florida, a region that supplies much of the eastern half of the United States with produce, tractors are crisscrossing beans and cabbage fields, plowing perfectly ripe vegetables back into the soil. I know, it's like, what the heck? And after weeks of concern about shortages in grocery stores and mad scrambles to find the last box of pasta, or remember the toilet paper shortage, right? Okay. Well, many of the nation's largest farms are struggling with another ghastly effect of the pandemic. And they're being forced to destroy tens of millions of pounds of fresh food that they no longer sell. Yeah. Instead of giving it to pantries, food pantries, or whatever the case may be, they're just destroy it. Now, the closing of restaurants. Okay, remember when all of those restaurants were closing? Hotels and schools they left some farmers with like no buyers and more than half their crops. And even as retailers see spikes in food sales to Americans, who are now eating nearly every meal at home, right? The increases are not enough to absorb all the perishable food that was planted just like weeks ago and intended for schools and businesses. All right. So now the amount of waste is staggering. It's staggering. And the nation's largest dairy cooperative, Dairy Farmers of America, they estimate that farmers are dumping as many as, listen to this, ready? 3.7 million gallons of milk a day. Let that sink in. Now, a single chicken processor is smashing 750,000 unhatched eggs every single week. Now, many farmers say that they have donated part of the surplus to food banks, Meals on Wheels, blah, 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 right? Which have been overwhelmed with demand. But there is only so much perishable food that charities with limited numbers of refrigerators and volunteers and stuff like that they can absorb, okay? And the cost of harvesting and processing and transporting and produce and milk to food banks and other areas, that would put another financial strain on farms that have seen half of their paying customers disappear. Now, exporting much of the excess food is not feasible either. So farmers say because many international customers are also struggling, right? And recent currency fluctuations make exports not profitable either. So, it's like, what do you do? So the widespread destruction of fresh food at a time when many Americans, they're hurting financially. Millions are suddenly, either out of work or in between jobs, or what's that saying? You're only one paycheck away from being homeless. Okay, so it's an especially dystopian turn of events, even by the standards of a global pandemic. It reflects on the profound economic uncertainty wrought by this virus, right? And how difficult it has been for huge sectors of the economy, like agriculture, to adjust to such a sudden change on how it has to operate, right? So when they're plowing through fresh vegetables right back into the soil, then they have to plant the same crop again, hoping the economy will restart by the time the next batch of vegetables is ready to be harvested. But if this food service industry doesn't kick back into gear, then those crops have to be destroyed too. But farmers are also they're learning in real time about the nation's consumption habits. You know, remember when we were all in quarantine? It showed that how many more vegetables Americans eat with meals that are prepared for them in restaurants than when they have to cook for themselves. People don't make onion rings at home unless they're already frozen in a bag from Walmart. You know? And there are no, really good solutions to the fresh food glut. And, I mean, unless you're a homesteader and you're canning or you're pickling or you're, whatever you're doing in order to preserve that food for you and yours. All right. So it's just sad that these farmers are literally leaving thousands of pounds of their harvest to decompose in the trenches of their farms. There's no way to redistribute the quantities of this produce. Over the decades, the nation's food banks have tried to shift from offering mostly processed meals to serving fresh produce. But the pandemic caused a shortage of volunteers, making it more difficult to serve fruits and vegetables, which are time-consuming and expensive to transport. So, to purchase from a whole new set of farmers and suppliers, it takes time, it takes knowledge. You have to know people to do this, to get that. So, the waste has become especially severe in the dairy industry, where cows need to be milked multiple times a day, regardless of whether there are buyers or not. Major consumers of dairy, like public schools, coffee shops, they're leaving the milk processing plants with fewer customers at a time of the year when cows produce milk at their fastest rate. About 5% of the country's milk supply is currently being dumped at that amount. Is expected to double if the closings, are extended for months or whatever the case may be. There's still restaurants that have not opened back up. Now, before the pandemic, the dairymen's, the processing plant in Cleveland, would produce 3 loads of milk, or around 13,000, 14,000 gallons for Starbucks every single day. Now, Starbucks, their order is down to one load every 3 days. Now, for a while, after the pandemic took hold, the plant collected twice as much milk from farmers as it could process, keeping the excess supply in refrigerated trailers. But how long do you think that's going to stay good? But eventually, the plant ran out of storage. So what happens? They have to dump it. No place to go with it. Can't drink that much milk, right? One of the farms that got a call from, it was another dairy farm, they had nearly 200 cows on a plot of land in northern Ohio. And they literally had to flush 31,000 pounds of milk down a lagoon. It took more than an hour for the milk to flow out of its refrigerated tank and down a drain pipe. Now, for years, dairy farmers have struggled with low prices and bankruptcies. To prevent further dumping, farming groups are trying everything to find places to send the excess milk. Now, hopefully, with schools back in session, it'll kick up a notch for them. But even lobbying pizza chains to increase the amount of cheese on every slice. Okay. But there are logical obstacles that prevent dairy products from being shifted neatly from food service customers to retailers. At many dairy processors, and this is just an example, the machinery is designed to package shredded cheese in large bags for restaurants or place milk in small cartons for schools, right? Rather than arrange the products in retail-friendly containers. So to repurpose those plants to put cheese in 8-ounce bags that sell in grocery stores or milk in gallon jugs, that would require millions of dollars in investments. For now, some processors have concluded that spending the money, it's not worth it. And those same logistical challenges are bedeviling the poultry plants that were set up to distribute chicken to restaurants rather than stores. And each week, the chicken processor, Sanderson Farms, they destroyed 750,000 unhatched eggs. And that's 5.5% of their total production, sending them to a rendering plant to be turned into pet food. So you can just imagine how bad it's getting, and it's only going to get worse, and it's just sad. It's really sad. All right, so all right, guys, that's I mean, if you know, I know a lot of people have farms that are, in the community and stuff like that. I feel so bad. I'm so sorry, but I'm hoping that things start to look better, get better. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I love you. I'll see you in the next one. You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping. And as always,